Welcome to DC Radio. I'm Dr. Alexis Moreno,
I'm Alex Honigman.
and we are both mental health professionals and married.
True.
We're going to be celebrating 7 years
Yeah,
in a few days, and we are best friends, if I
that's
may say.
that's true. That is true. I like you more than everybody. No,
It's a good sign of either my awesomeness or a bad side of everyone you know who's probably listening to this show.
love you guys.
So we also work together,
Mhm.
two different companies, Wit and Reason, our mental health and consultation practice, and Luna de Honey, our wellness design company,
Yeah.
business, wellness.
Consultation.
And we are also very engaged activists together.
Very true.
We hold many roles
We do.
together
But I
and,
mean,
and alongside each other.
I would say that they're not actually all that different from each other. Is the idea of creating mental health spaces and making sure that we're engaged in mental health is the same as, for example, your home and how much your mental health and home like need to be integrated and those things. So like those things aren't too disparate. And with that also comes a lot of activism because we see a lot of things in this world and we engage with a lot of people who need help. So we do tend to come from places. I mean, I'm a social worker, which is everything, right? And you're a community psychologist. You're not just a psychologist, but you're also like community psychologist.
Few things to emphasize, which is fair. Not only are not all psychologists and therapists and doctors created equal, but your specialty does say a lot about your education and your value set. And so community psychology is a very specific and very rare
Yeah.
specialization within psychology that does lean more sociology, social work, aesthetic.
I'll co-sign for you.
Yeah, thanks. So a lot of people don't really get that.
Mm,
And that's what I really appreciate about you is that you get how mental health and wellness is integrated in everything that we do, from design all the way to human rights and law
art and
and yeah, art,
everything.
creativity, and everything that we do.
Mhm,
And so with that said, in all of our different roles,
mhm.
both personally and professionally, we too have been going through the process of recovering from the US elections for 2024.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think we both handle it very differently, but I think we both have a lot to like process there. I kind of jokingly say that like come around midnight of the election night. I mean, and this goes for any given year for the most part, actually.
Mhm.
I all of a sudden am fully booked the rest of the week and the rest of the
As
rest
a
of the couple of
therapist.
weeks as a therapist
Yeah.
because working in these spaces and working with folks who are actively involved in the world in some way, shape, or form and high performers and all sorts of things they're affected by these things. Their politics affects everything
Yeah.
and everyone in different ways. And so I think for me, I dive right into these things. I don't really feel like I have a lot of time to process myself,
Mm.
but I also think going through their process actually does a lot for me to be processing, which is interesting.
Do you end up having some kind of parallel experience?
I just kind of allow them, therapy's their space. It's not mine.
Right.
So like to allow them to express and engage and do those things, I think that's really important. I think for me afterwards, like I'll reflect on, hey, like how they approach this idea or, well, yeah, I feel the same way at times. And as we both kind of work through, how do you get through this and move towards healthy and make sure that you're engaged in healthy processing, taking agency or empowerment.
Working in therapy and even like wellness coaching, it's like a fair, constant daily reminder of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yep. I always say,
How we're supposed to be engaging
yeah,
in life in healthy ways.
people always get surprised. I give like anecdotal evidence, things that I'm like, hey, here's what I really do. Where I'll be like, look, like journaling's important. And I'll show my journal, like writing it,
Here it
what's going
is.
on. And they'll be like, you do that? I'm like, yes. Like, I'm
Finally right
not a
there.
hypocrite. Like,
Yeah.
I tell you to do these things because I find them valuable in a lot of different ways. Now, us finding the tool that's exactly and honed for you is our journey together, helping you get through that
Yeah.
and find that thing.
Yeah.
I'll totally try anything.
Not all therapists are created equal, and not all therapists practice what they preach.
Yeah, sure.
I'm almost impressed that they don't. Because, like, How do you not, when you're seeing the consequences of not doing it in your face every day with your clients, and you're speaking to what needs to be done every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yet you're still not doing it.
Yeah.
That's kind of impressive.
So this week has been really busy with walking through a lot of different kind of themes. A lot of them has to do with anxiety, fears of the unknown,
Yeah.
and transitions
Yeah.
and conceptions of change. When you think about, regardless of where you are, what you're doing, that idea of change is tough. Change is tough for everybody.
Mm.
I mean, on the family feud board of stress, number one that people report is moving,
Yeah.
right? What else is changing? Except for, changing our home, for example, is a
Yeah.
huge idea of change.
Feel just that displacement
There's a whole even
too.
field of psychology, like change processing, right? So,
Yeah.
and organizational psychology.
Ooh, we should do a whole episode on change.
I will nerd out about change any day. I know you will too. You're so good at that.
Since we might kick off from this episode on election recovery and activism, mental health for activists, we might follow this up with a
That sounds
change
great.
process.
Let's do it.
Seems
Love
like an appropriate follow up to this.
that.
So curious about how you all have been doing. Take this time to reflect on your process post election. How have you been emotionally processing, if at all? We're going to be diving into some suggestions,
Mhm.
some practices to engage in both the recovery process and just even the long term mental health practices that we should be engaging in. So that way, number one, we could be healthy and well. And then number two, as an extra bonus, we can continue engaging in our values and activism.
So for you, how do you feel like you engage people in those ideas, that recovery? What do you notice as far as the processing of emotions?
Dude, I have allowed myself to sob. For, you know, first week, I just at times would feel myself on the verge of tears. Obviously, I need to still function. So I would take breaks from crying, but then at times notice where it's just on the verge. If I was to answer someone's check-in question of how you're doing, I would just start sobbing,
You,
which has happened on the phone with friends. Definitely processing a lot more sadness, confusion, frustration, disappointment.
I'm hearing a skeleton of like the stages of grief here. Yeah.
Totally, totally. And I'm seeing this a lot online too, which is really interesting because people are in their own way openly processing online on social
Yeah.
media. I don't think they realize that they're doing it,
Yeah.
but they're going through the stages, including denial.
Hmm.
Kind of hope that they're right with their denial. But more likely, it's we're all just going through the waves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, we need to continue to have vulnerable conversations around those things, vulnerable spaces around those things. I think there's a lot to be done when it comes to processing the difference between, say, your stress and then your anxiety and your worry. Because your stressors are always going to be there. The stresses are parts of your life. The anxiety is how you're going to feel about said stress. But then the worry, I think, is what gets you because you start kind of perseverating on what the things we can control, the things that we don't know.
Like, what's going to happen?
Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? Am I going to have my job? Am I not going to have my job?
Yeah.
Like all of the kind of circular things that, number one, you can't control it. And thinking
The
about
what
it
ifs
and
are
changing.
endless. And that's like a common thing we talk about in sessions is like when people start filing on the what ifs, it's like, okay, but they're endless. We're going to be doing this forever. you know? So let's try not to engage in that. And because it's just at the end of the day, ineffective.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's been a lot of going back to like, hey, there you are thinking, let's go back to your emotional processing. What are you actually feeling right now? And sometimes people are going to feel helpless or hopeless. So they're going to go through those different feelings. You actually a litany of feelings that were really useful there.
Yeah.
But I think to sit there with that feeling and just name it is important and notice it and sit with it, even physically, just be like, here's where I feel it.
I mean, some of you out there listening might not be as like in tune to your emotions as I am now and have like the courage to be as vulnerable and just sob and want to sit on the floor for a bit. And that's okay. I've worked very hard to be more comfortable with my emotional process.
And people's reactions are going to be on like the full version or spectrum of feeling, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, It makes sense. And there's no wrong way to feel about these things. So I think that there's a wrong way to feel something is to then repress it or push it away or do nothing with it or
Yeah.
ignore it or compartmentalize it in a way.
Or that little snout noise was our puppy who just came up. I think she's recognizing that as I'm talking about how I've been feeling, she's like, "Oh,
These
we need some puppy love."
animals are good for this.
Yes. So allow yourself to emotionally process, and this could look different for everybody. In my case, it's a lot of crying and talking it out. For others, like Alex was mentioning, and I jokingly alluded to, is that if recognizing your emotions isn't like your default, focusing on your body would be a good alternative. Though you may not be able to answer how I'm feeling at any given moment, you may be better able to check in, like, how am I physically
Yeah.
doing? What are the physical changes I'm experiencing right now?
And not to go too far off field, but I always think of like depression, right? Depression, 70% of depression is actually diagnosed by your primary care physician. The reason why the primary care physician ends up diagnosing most depression is people come in and say, Doc, I have aches, pains, I have trouble sleeping. They have all these somatic symptoms and they don't know but there's no causality for it. The doc does their due diligence, asks them all sorts of different both physical questions and the mental health questions if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's why they end up doing that because people notice the physical stuff more than they notice the mental,
Yeah.
which it makes sense. And I think that's what I go to when it comes to these things. You're going to notice maybe you're more stiff for aches or pains, or maybe you're realizing that you're a little bit shorter on temper when you are stuck in traffic or missed a metro or did something,
Or in line or trying to order
Yep.
your coffee or
Yep.
something. Yeah.
You have
I've heard
just
a
a
lot of
little
that
less
from people too.
patience.
But a lot. Sorry. Giving people a lot, a lot of grace.
Give them a lot of grace.
No, the people I talk to are like, dude, I was so freaking pissed. I wanted to curse this person out on the street.
Mhm.
And fair enough. So losing a lot of patients. Yeah. And we always want to rule out any kind of medical issues for physical symptoms. So check in with your medical provider if you are noticing any kind of physical ailments. And then also, check in with your mental and emotional health too. Okay. So I talked a bit about my process.
Mhm.
How would you, I mean, I live with, I have someone an idea and you have an idea of mine, but your turn.
Yeah, I'm
Your public yourself to
yeah,
let us ask
yeah,
you.
no, no. I'm like I said, I process a lot during like post session with my clients. Things that they say resonate with me, and I let that kind of sit with me throughout that. I mean, it's their session, it's not mine. So.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is and I tell them they work on their coping strategies. They come up with
I'm
some brilliant
asking
ideas.
you, how have you been doing?
So I'm doing okay. I'm sad, but also I think for me, I always go back to education. I know it sounds weird, but my idea is that the more I create spaces and vulnerable conversations regarding education, educating the public, educating people, educating activists, education, I think is my go-to when it comes to this. Because if I feel helpless or hopeless, because I have zero control. So when I feel that, I feel like the more I can educate, the more I can talk these experiences, the better it's going to be. And so for me, the default is, yes, this is the world we live in. Yes, this is the current state of reality. That's disheartening. But honestly, I think part of me says it's no different than it ever has been.
Mm.
It is just a reflection of what we actually see in the world.
I think that's part of the hard part for a lot of people is election results can be somewhat of a reflection of our current state and realities.
Yeah.
And so even though we're walking around sometimes in our own bubbles of shared values
Mhm.
and shared thinking, when we look at that map of the United States and we see how people voted, um, presumably according to their own values and priorities, I think that's a lot of the harsh reality and hardship that people and heartbreak that people are experiencing and kind of grieving right now.
And I think for me, a lot of this stuff also I'm hearing is like people reflecting on choices they're making and seeing that the people in their lives that then do not hold the same value set.
Yeah.
That's been very hard for them to reconcile at this point.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like, how do I still make space for this person? And I mean, it's their own journey, it's their own choice, of
Yeah.
course, but like it's them processing grief too, because a lot of them are saying, I can't align with folks in my life or can't make excuses any longer for these things, even if it's like fiscal policy over rights or something like that.
Right. I was thinking about this a lot and more in terms of Maslow's hierarchy
Oh, nice.
and trying to understand how people are voting and how they're making their decisions. And, when we're looking at this triangle of need, the concept is that we have all these needs as humans and you work from the bottom and you work your way up. So you have your physiological need, breathing,
Food,
breathing,
water.
food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep. All humans need that. You got that. Then you can move on to safety and security concern, health, employment, property, family, social ability. You got that. Then you can start paying attention to put energy into love and belonging, friendship, family, intimacy, sense of connection. For that, self esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, the need to be a unique individual. And then if you got all that kind of figured out, then you could focus on self actualization, your morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, experience, purpose, meaning, and inner potential.
When you think about this historically, it's not to put anybody in any given category, but people who actually feel good about what they're doing and what they're engaged in, feel like they've built some healthy aspects of themselves. They're the ones who sit around and they're the ones who are pontificating a little bit more. They're the ones who are thinking about these things. If you're scrambling to survive constantly, you're not sitting around and thinking about the meaning of life.
And here's the thing. So when I was thinking about how people were voting,
Yeah.
whether it was accurate or not, trying to vote for their physiological needs, food, shelter,
Hmm.
a lot of people can't afford that
Hmm.
right now. A lot
Yeah.
of people are struggling. So it would make sense that people are focusing like, oh, it would be nice to be able to vote according to morality
Hmm.
and promoting love and belonging. But dude, I don't even have my physiological needs. And so I'm going to vote for who's ever pretty much messaging narrative is aligning with supporting my physiological needs, whether accurate or not. That's making a lot of sense to me. And the interesting part about this is that some people are thinking in those terms where it's like, I'm struggling to get food and shelter. It's a privilege to vote according to morality. But I'm also seeing the flip side of that, where other people are like, being able to focus on money is a privilege. I am trying to maintain my physiological safety needs based on morality. So I kind of see this triangle based on need kind of slipped
Well, and you
from
can't get
different
the
perspectives.
thing is, you can't get to the top of the triangle. You're not actually touching on these other aspects of the triangle until you feel well established in the other ones. You may think you are.
Hmm.
For example, you could join a cult, right? Somebody provides for you these other physiological needs. They make you feel safe and secure, and they engage in things like love and belonging because they're done in this out of order sense.
Hmm.
Somebody stripped you, they move you away from these things. They pull everything there and they say, hey, I'm going to do all this for you. I'm going to get you everything you need. This is all you need is me. So then they co-opt the entire thing, which is why something like a cult works.
Yeah.
That's how belief works. The structures work because they're going to keep you safe. They're going to keep you fed. They're going to keep you in this place. And their messaging co-ops that third layer, which is very vulnerable when people especially are feeling like they're bouncing around between the two, because we yearn to connect with others. When you're constantly scrambling, at the end of the day, you still want a friend. You still want somebody to connect with. And I
Yeah.
think that's where a lot of times we get compromised,
Hmm.
because that third layer, that love and belonging to humans, it's what makes us human.
Yeah.
It's what divides us from animals. I mean, that emotional layer there. And I think that's where people are dealing on these things. Like, how are they processing this stuff? Well, where do they belong and how they feel? But they're missing out on like, okay, like what, how do all these things happen?
Right.
And they're skipping steps. They're not showing all the work in the math problem. It's not mathing. And I think that's where it's hard for people because they really are struggling with that grief process. There's some of them are realizing different aspects of this that are not going to play out the way they want. I think some people are having trouble doing this thing. So even in activism, how do you engage in this thing? And I think we're also learning whole different layers of activism. People are angry and talking about carrying soup for my family. And then there's people who are, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's the other people out there who are like, I'm having conversations with my family or whoever else has been on the fringe of this. I think we have to reconcile different new ways of engaging. There's been a whole movement in around no longer spending on anything that would actually inspire or engage in aspects of the economy that do not serve the public,
Right.
right? When it serves private interests, that's where people are starting to like, oh no, hold on. People making money off me are making more money off me than they ever did. And I'm not getting a cent.
Right.
And some people are really pushing for like no spending,
Yep.
zero spending. People are like, use and recycle everything, do whatever you can to no longer spend. And when you do spend, spend
Tough.
locally.
My friends.
It is really difficult. There's a lot of like homesteading movement. There's a lot
Yeah.
of other movements say get off the
We
grid.
we tried that for a
Yeah,
bit.
it is
It's
tough.
hard.
It is tough to be mindful, to build those things on your own, to stay green, if you will, and do those things in that way.
Yeah.
But it is independence in a certain way. But that level of spending as advocacy and
Yeah.
activism is a really interesting thing.
And I'm thinking that's what I'm seeing more this round with activists is getting a little bit more creative. And I'm sure some people started this a bit ago, getting more creative than the protesting and the rallying.
Yeah.
We've been there. We've
Had,
done that.
yeah.
And here we are.
We were present. We've been
That's-
present for some of the biggest things
that's-
in history.
I'm kind of feeling that too personally as an activist. Not sure where you are, but we were protesting on a weekly basis for a while there. And there are some benefits to it. It does serve as a nice, even emotionally processing, nice release to just let it all out and scream to the top of your lungs and bang some together
Yeah,
and,
true.
and outwardly go against what these issues are. So there are definitely some benefits to doing it. I think at this point, activists are looking for more ways to have impact.
And I think the thing is, a lot of times we talk about either you go out in the streets and you make some noise. Okay, great. Another way to continue that yield something to you.
Yeah.
Connecting with those people there, also really important. Meet new people. Go and introduce yourself to people who have amazing signs. Go and talk to new people. Meet
That's
new
my favorite
people.
part is finding the people with the most creative.
Sure. And start building friendships, start building connections, because in those vulnerable spaces are people who actually have value sets like you.
Yeah.
So build your support network, build up these things. I think that's something to really take on. I think,
I met one of my newest best friends at a protest.
and I think
Marissa.
amazing. But I think as you continue to expand on that, I think the idea is that you need to find belonging. You need to find love and belonging there. You need to make sure that you are taking care of these things. The other thing is people always talk about donations. And the thing is, that's really tough for so many people. So many
Yeah.
people do not have the ability to donate. So what can you do? And what I think of is don't spend where you can.
Right.
Like think about who you're spending, what you're spending on, and who you're
If
supporting.
you have money, put it toward the cause. If you don't have money,
Put it towards yourself.
don't put it toward the anti-cause.
Yes. But support
There's got to be a better mantra for that.
Sure.
But
support yourself as best as you can.
Yeah.
And even if you have to support things that may not support your best interest, that may not have been in support of your best interests, businesses or other things that support anti your interest.
Yeah.
Being very conscious of that is really important. And no judgment to you if you have to go do this thing or if you have to buy a meal at a certain place. Okay. Give yourself the grace to go, okay, here's what I'm doing and this is what it's looking like, and shape those when you can.
I think a good approach for activists in their mental health practice is to look at it through a wellness lens. And so if we divide up our life according to our different areas of wellness, you could start exploring different areas of your life where you can make decisions that align with your values. So we talk about like your financial wellness, the financial area of your life. How can you make sure that your financial decisions are aligning with your activism? Socially, those support groups, those friends, having tough conversations with family members. What about in your intimate relationships, talking with your partner, talking this kind of stuff out, figuring out what you two can do together? You could even think about the creative aspect of your life. What is your creative outlet for activism look like? Even in your academia, what do you want to do? So social media, there's a whole lot of new attorneys coming out now. They're like, this is my decision to become an attorney and to understand law and our government better. And even in your employment and your career, does this align with your values?
I think supporting creators who make content that develops that for you or shows that, artists, other people, seek small things.
Yeah.
Seek them often, engage with them as you can. I think that's really great.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's other thing that something else, as you're talking about identity factors, that I think of as a man, I hold a lot of privilege and I walk around the world pretty much
As a white person.
as a white presenting man walking around, and I really do not have most of the worry that most people ever have to engage
I
in.
mean, you still have
Um,
worry, but
I
you don't have the
sure,
maybe risk.
sure. And my life is not harder being a white man.
Mhm.
It is hard because it's hard, but it's not hard because
Mhm.
I think of what I can do to signal safety to others, actually. And I think that and I saw a couple of different military folk and some other people who are large bearded individuals or other things there that have a stereotype around them. I think in general, and I don't know if anyone's going to mistake me for, that type of person, but I think the thing is, as I'm out in the world, I think I'd like to continue to present as something supportive, an ally, whatever that means. And if that's a visible sign of something, sure. This gentleman was wearing like a bracelet, or a military guy was wearing blue patches on his gear
Mhm.
and just signaling like, hey, look, I'm safe
Mhm.
and I'm open and I'm honest.
And I've seen those too because the white women social media algorithm that comes across my feed,
Mm.
and then I'm also on Black femme algorithms. They also are addressing the it's tough because the concern with that is, well, then anyone could make it.
Sure. And I get that word
They're
too, but
trying to figure out.
I'm saying this because I still haven't figured it out. I haven't figured out what I want to do in that space,
Mhm.
but there's something I don't know what I want to do, but I think there's something there about what it looks like to create allyship and make sure that you are obvious about being out.
Yeah.
I think from day one, as a young punk rock kid, I would have patches that were anti-Nazi, anti this, anti-establishment, but like a lot of other
Yeah.
things there that were really important to me then. And I knew then that this was a really big factor because there was a huge Nazi movement growing up in Los Angeles. If you've
Mhm.
ever seen American History X,
Yep.
that's what it looked like. And I think because I saw that and because I hated that so very much,
Mm.
I think that pushed me a lot of activism at like age 12, age
Yeah.
11 and 12. I was already going, no, 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 this world is not for you. Like when it comes to type of hate, no, we're not doing that.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think that's where those visible signs were, yeah, like I still have old jackets that have those things on them. So what does that mean? And I think that's where I go to with it. So how do I represent that now?
So we have some kind of like symbolism that we can align ourselves with. And then even mannerisms. I see guys talk about when they're hiking and they see a woman hiking by herself. They make space for them.
Mhm.
Or, me, I would walk the dog by myself at night and I'm aware of my surroundings. And it's helpful when a shady figure keeps their distance or crosses the street or gives me space
Yeah.
just so that way they are communicating to me I am not
Yeah.
threatened.
And I think
Yeah.
that's stuff that I do already. Those are a lot of
Yeah.
things I do already, but I think there's another layer that I really want to work with myself about what I really want to do there. So I've been thinking about that.
So when you think about your activism and what you align with, what your values are, what you want to present, you also think about it, how you present in the world
Yeah.
and how you act in the world. What are your mannerisms?
And
What do you want to uphold?
and I feel like that's just an idea that resonates with me in some way. I don't know what I want to do with it yet, but it's something to consider, like ways to create safety and create engagement and create vulnerability with others and to make sure that you're living the value set in which you're telling people.
And I think that's the key to the long-term mental health aspect
Yeah.
of all of this is that a whole lot of us have been flooded with emotions right now. And we're desperately trying to find some kind of cure for it, some kind of answer. And the long-term mental health tip to this is that we do not have to have it all figured out right now.
Yeah.
Even though there may be some urgency to
Okay.
just resolve this stuff, the long-term mental health aspect of this is that it is a lifelong practice. And ideally, you are going to be evolving and tweaking and improving
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah. I mean, it should be intentional instead of reactive. I
Yeah.
think the idea is intentionality there. And I think that as you go through these things and you're coping and building up coping skills and engaging, that you're finding community, that you're finding what you need, that you're taking on new creative aspects of yourself to continue to do that, and really building a solid from who you are with values. I think it's the only way to really be sustainable when it comes to being an activist, to recover from these things, to really move forward now. I think that it really has to be focused on what is your core and what does that mean to you and live that truth.
Regardless of whatever's going on in the world. That does not dictate our values and how we present in the world. That's where empowerment comes from. Still managing and controlling what we have control over. And that's how we present ourselves in the world and the decisions we're making in all of these various aspects of
Yeah.
our life.
Well,
So we still have some power.
definitely.
Activists, you still have power. So awesome job. So we'll have all those resources linked to our show page at witandreason.com/DC radio. and come check us out.